Hey everyone, it's time to take your victory lap. We were wrong.
Intel stock has done quite well in the last year.
And that's a good thing. We were hoping for the success of Intel, and congrats to those of you who've invested. Let's talk a little bit about market share, because that's what we've been talking about all along. Market share of AMD and Intel in this environment. And we're also going to briefly talk about the FPGA market and Lattice Semiconductor. But before we do, want to give a shout out to our friends over at fiscal.ai. We prepared all of the charts that you're going to see today with Fiscal, and they're having a 25% off sale from Thursday, May 7th to Thursday, May 14th. And you can get 25% off with our unique link, fiscal.ai/CSI. They only do sales twice a year, so get in with that link, 25% off. Find it in the description below. All right, Nick, let's break down the data center revenue for Intel and AMD.
Yeah, especially in data center where for the better part of 2 years, we've said AMD, yes, we understand the need and the desire to chase NVIDIA and GPUs, but we also said that just focusing on the CPU business, where they are actually making really great money and can continue to increase profit margin, actually makes the most sense. And lo and behold, now in 2026, we're talking about a CPU shortage. And really this story here is about availability. I understand Intel has its own foundries, and there are some good things happening there, but both Intel and AMD rely on Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing for their most advanced chiplets. Yes, Intel does have its own fabs, but it uses TSMC. And this is a story about availability right now. And AMD has very much used its availability of CPUs to its advantage. You can see them continuing to march higher in this segment. And the expectation at this point after AMD's earnings last night is this trend will very much continue this year. In fact, if things continue on this trajectory, AMD could actually pass up Intel's revenue in the data center and AI market segment late this year, maybe sometime in 2027. We'll have to see how Intel is able to ramp up new products in this segment, as they said that they are going to.
But what about in the client segment? This is Intel's moneymaker, I would say.
It's what's keeping the lights on.
Exactly. And as you can see, the client revenue for AMD is not their main growth driver. It's not part of a secular growth trend for either of these companies. Really, both of them have been focusing on data center primarily, obviously. But this could become a growing business for AMD, and it could still continue to take market share away from Intel.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that pans out. But it is significant. As you said, Casey, this is the portion of Intel that currently offsets losses elsewhere in the business. And losing market share to AMD is obviously going to become a problem for Intel and its turnaround story in the coming next couple of years.
And then let's briefly talk about the embedded segment for AMD. That's the FPGA business. That's what they acquired when they purchased Xilinx, against Lattice Semiconductor, which is the only FPGA pure play left. Intel sold its Altera unit. It's now 51% owned by private equity, so you don't see that consolidated in the income statement anymore, which is why we just have Lattice and AMD here for comparison's sake. Lattice could be back to record revenues as early as Q2 2026. You can see the big jump there on the quarterly change. That's the blue line, total percent change, up 42% in this most recent quarter. And they said that they're also acquiring an infrastructure management software called AMI, which is planned for later this year. And that will further boost growth for Lattice, about $1 billion in annualized revenue run rate by the end of this year. So lots of good things happening at Lattice. What about for AMD?
Still a very modest return to growth here for AMD. However, we will continue to point out, while the revenue growth itself isn't necessarily helping the AMD story at this particular point in time, the acquisition of Xilinx did boost the company's overall profit margin. And even in this trough for AMD Embedded, which addresses a lot of markets from automotive to healthcare to aerospace and defense, Also, the EDA software companies use a lot of FPGAs for their platform and for their customers. So what it's lacking in more robust return to growth, at least this is a very profitable part of AMD that it can use to funnel into its endeavors elsewhere. A deeper look into what Lattice has going on and how it differs from AMD Embedded is a discussion for another time. We have some content on that over on Semi Insider.
One final chart from our friends over at fiscal.ai. This forward-looking look at Intel and AMD on a price-to-earnings basis. The numbers are likely going to change over the next few weeks because of earnings revisions. The current valuation numbers will definitely change, but you can see Intel on a forward price-to-earnings basis over 104x and AMD at 48x.
I think we're probably going to have revisions to this probably by the time this video publishes. So these are, of course, subject to change because they are based on Wall Street's adjusted earnings per share estimates. A couple of important notes on this forward PE, it's just 1 year forward earnings per share estimates, but the valuation multiples themselves imply expectations beyond just the next year, beyond just through the first quarter of 2027. This implies expectation that Intel continues to improve, continues to dig itself out of the hole it's been in for the last number of years, and that AMD's momentum continues definitely in CPUs now that agentic AI is being talked about all the time, as well as some progress in GPUs with its Instinct series MI400 coming later on. So all good stuff here. For us, this is not just simply a function of valuation. Intel still has a lot of work to do to get itself back in fighting shape. It is obviously in the early innings of doing just that, so that's great. But the cleaner investment in the CPU market, especially if you're just looking at CPUs alone for these two businesses, is still definitely AMD. Obviously, the stock price in the last year has said something different, but a lot of that also has to do with Intel and a lot of investors buying in on, at the very least, the company bottoming out and stabilizing a bit. I don't know what more to say other than that. We were wrong on the stock price, but the actual business and financial analysis, definitely not. The stock price will take care of itself over the long term for both businesses.
Since it's NBA playoff season, we can say, Mull don't lie. You see how it all shakes out.
Yeah. Someone's going to use that against us. I know it. They're going to flip that back around on us.
I can't wait to hear the comments. It's all right. We can take it. All right. I wish I knew of another company that could enter the CPU market.
And it was still trading for a relative value?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about this, but there is something called the Vera CPU that's coming later in 2026. Maybe that's something.
We'll leave you with that thought. Make sure you check out the discount for fiscal.ai, May 7th through the 14th, 25% off of any of their paid plans with our link, fiscal.ai/CSI. And we'll see you very soon here at Chip Stock Investor. Make sure you check out this next video that we did on a little known or maybe little interested in company called Advantest.